In today's chaotic and confusing world, Christians are searching for biblical clarity they can trust. Denison Forum exists to help believers discern today's news through Scripture so they can think critically, live faithfully, and serve intentionally. This podcast, along with all of our free resources, are part of that mission. But it is only possible because of faithful monthly supporters we call Frontline Partners. When you give your first monthly gift, you help keep biblical truth free and accessible for believers everywhere. Your partnership equips Christians with biblically based insight and helps build a trusted Christian news alternative for the future. To join the front line, visit supportdf.org. That's support, the letter D, the letter F.org. Or you can click the link in the show notes. Stand on the front line of biblical clarity by giving monthly today. In a world filled with constant headlines and endless noise, believers need more than information. They need biblical discernment. Denison Forum exists to help Christians think critically, live faithfully, and serve intentionally by filtering today's news through the truth of Scripture. This podcast and all of our free resources are part of that mission. Frontline Partners make this work possible. Their monthly support helps keep biblical clarity free, accessible, and responsive in a rapidly changing culture. If you believe Christians need trusted, Scripture-centered guidance today, I invite you to join us. Visit supportdf.org or click the link in the show notes to become a Frontline Partner today. Greetings and welcome to Denison Forum's Daily Article Podcast for Monday, February the 23rd, 2026. I'm Chris Elkins, narrating today's daily article, authored by cultural theologian and pastor Dr. Jim Denison. Any of these stories could be the focus of today's daily article. The Winter Olympics concluded yesterday, with Norway winning 41 medals and the U.S. in second place with 33. The U.S. men's hockey team won the gold medal in overtime, its first since the Miracle on Ice 46 years earlier. A historic winter storm has placed 59 million people in the Northeast under weather warnings today. At least 14 people were killed yesterday, including 7 National Guard troops, as violence erupted across Mexico after the Army killed the country's most wanted drug lord. With U.S. forces in place across the Middle East, President Trump is said to be considering his options for Iran. Authorities in Arizona are continuing their search for Nancy Guthrie more than 3 weeks after she disappeared. But today, I'm focusing on Friday's Supreme Court decision striking down President Trump's global tariffs. I consider it an even more foundational story, though not for reasons you might think. As you know, I lead a nonprofit ministry committed to neutrality with regard to partisan politics. It may therefore surprise you that I'm writing this morning to claim that the court's decision is good news for every American. The reason I can do so and remain missional is that my assertion has nothing to do with partisan politics or tariffs and everything to do with our national and cultural future. In his Pulitzer Prize-winning book, The Radicalism of the American Revolution, historian Gordon Wood writes that our revolution, quote, did not just eliminate monarchy and create republics. It actually reconstituted what Americans meant by public or state power and brought about an entirely new kind of popular politics and a new kind of democratic officeholder, end quote. As political scholar Yuval Levin has written, the Constitution establishes a politics in which no one is in charge and, therefore, in some sense, everyone is in charge, end quote. We tend to focus on the founders' positive view of humanity that counters centuries of European monarchical thinking with all men are created equal. In such a worldview, anyone can be elected president, sit on the Supreme Court, or serve in Congress. But the founders also understood the negative side of humanity. In Federalist number 51, James Madison wrote, "If men were angels, no government would be necessary. If angels were to govern men, neither external nor internal controls on government would be necessary. In framing a government which is to be administered by men over men, the great difficulty lies in this. You must first enable the government to control the governed, and in the next place, oblige it to control itself." End quote. Accordingly, Madison and other framers of our Constitution created checks and balances to ensure no individual or group would possess unaccountable power. In our system, the Supreme Court can overturn the actions of the President can veto laws made by Congress, and Congress can overturn court decisions through legislation. For example, the horrific Supreme Court Dred Scott decision of 1857 versus the Civil Rights Act of 1965. Laws can replace laws, as can constitutional amendments. Presidents and members of Congress can be replaced by voters, and they and justices can be impeached. This system is intended to prevail even in the face of partisan pressure. For example, in his response to Friday's ruling, President Trump said he was absolutely ashamed of some of the justices who ruled 6-3 against him. In a post on X, Vice President J.D. Vance similarly called the High Court decision lawlessness. The Wall Street Journal headlined that the ruling, quote, rips open Trump's relationship with the Roberts Court. The president especially singled out Justices Amy Coney Barrett and Neil Gorsuch, whom he nominated in his first term as a disgrace to our nation. But he is abiding by the ruling and adopting other means of imposing tariffs. This outcome shows that our democratic republic continues to function 250 years after it was created. This is a foundational fact for which all Americans should be grateful. However, a government of laws, not of men, as John Adams famously described our system, can only take us so far. Legality is a poor substitute for morality. In our system, we can do whatever we want so long as we're not caught doing it. Much that is immoral and damaging to our lives and culture is nonetheless legal, from abortion and euthanasia to adultery, pornography, and same-sex marriage. The only path to our best lives is one that changes not just what we do, but the essence of who we are. This is an offer made by no legal system, worldview, or religion except Christianity. Only Jesus says we can be born again in John 3, verse 3. Only He can make us a new creation, noted in 2 Corinthians 5, verse 17. Only He can change our hearts. Our culture does not understand this. I didn't know it for many years before I became a Christian. And to my point today, I overlooked it for many years after I did. I thought Christianity was a system of morality by which I could please God and receive His blessing in return. Reading the Bible, praying, attending church, sharing my faith, and so on were the expected ways for Christians to behave. I believed the credo, what you are is God's gift to you, what you make of yourself is your gift to God. But what I could make of myself was not enough. Somehow, in my soul, I knew there was more than this. My God-shaped emptiness was not yet filled. To cite St. Augustine, my heart was still restless because it had not yet come to rest in Him. It was a spiritual formation course in seminary where I first became acquainted with the idea that God's Spirit could make me like God's Son, that if I would surrender my life to Him every day, He would then transform me in ways I could neither imagine nor produce. This is what famed missionary J. Hudson Taylor called the exchanged life. In They Found the Secret, 20 Transformed Lives That Reveal a Touch of Eternity, the late Wheaton College president, V. Raymond Edmond, wrote, "It is new life for old. It is rejoicing for weariness and radiance for dreariness. It is strength for weakness and steadiness for uncertainty. It is triumph even through tears and tenderness of heart instead of touchiness. It is lowliness of spirit instead of self-exaltation and loveliness of life because of the presence of the altogether lovely one." End quote. Would you like to make such an exchange today? Thank you for listening to today's Daily Article podcast. If you would also like to read the daily article with its citations and references linked to their sources, find links in the episode notes to read today's article and to subscribe to the Daily Article email newsletter.